And joining me live now is LaDoris Cordell, a former Santa Clara County Superior Court judge and former independent police auditor. So, LaDoris, is there any precedent that the city and the DA can look to on how they actually respond to all this?
Well, Brian, there have been texting scandals like this in other cities. For example, in San Francisco, also in San Jose. So this one is the largest that I've ever seen, involving at least 24 officers exchanging racist, homophobic, and sexist text messages. So the response is going to have to be multi-pronged because this scandal is raising havoc in our courts, in the police department, in city government, and in the community. So there isn't just one approach here. So one, with regard to the courts, the request from the public defender is a reasonable one, where the district attorney's office will have to look at every single case that these officers were involved in to determine whether or not these were legitimate arrests and whether or not they testified properly and truthfully in court. In the police department itself, if you have 10% of the officers now on some sort of leave because of this, the police department, one, has to make sure that the community still gets proper service. But in addition, this raises a big question about training and selecting officers. How did these 24 or 26 individuals end up in the police department? How were they screened? So this brings up a whole nother issue about how do you stop others like-minded coming into the department. Then you have city government, and the issue there becomes, does the mayor and the city council, do they determine who hires the chief, or is it still the city manager? So, and then the community itself, there's trust issues here. How can you trust people who have these racist attitudes patrolling your community and obliged and obligated to protect and serve? I don't think you can.
So LaDoris, let's touch back on the criminal cases in Antioch. So could we see an actual reversal in those past convictions, and could we see charges dropped in pending cases?
Absolutely, and that has happened in other jurisdictions. So it is up to the district attorney, along with the public defender's office, to look at every single one of these cases to determine what really happened. Apparently, according to some of these text messages, these officers had no problem falsifying reports, making up things in order to arrest people. That cannot stand. So it's going to take some tedious work, and perhaps they should bring in someone from the outside to review every single one of these arrests and convictions, and then determine how in the criminal system these officers might be held accountable.
You talked about public trust, and of course these are still allegations and we don't know how this is all going to play out. But in the meantime, how does a police department rebuild itself? How does the police department rebuild that trust?
The key to trust in law enforcement and having trust with the community is transparency. Being as transparent as possible about who is involved, what is being done to weed out these people, and then what is being done in terms of hiring, screening of officers. Being honest and upfront is the best way and the only way to establish trust in the community.